The last weave, the chamber seemed to shrink around them, every sound muffled except for the slow, careful tearing of golden fibers. The thread thief's hollow gaze stayed fixed on Sleepy Paws, and for the first time since stepping into the between paths, he felt the thread inside him, a warmth not just in his chest, but running along his paws, as if it recognized him. Luma shifted, raising their lantern high. "The heart is not yours to touch," they said, voice low but sharp. The figure's hands moved again, tugging at a strand until it came free with a sound like a sigh. "The thread binds more than it should," the voice breathed in their minds. "It keeps paths closed that were meant to remain open." As it spoke, the prowler stepped forward, crossing the lantern's light. Its shadows curled and trembled, but it didn't retreat. Instead, it placed itself between Sleepy Paws and the figure, the golden glimmer in its chest now pulsing in rhythm with the thread. The Sleepy Paws understood without words. The prowler was a guardian, but it couldn't act alone. The thread needed more than protection. It needed to be rewoven where it had been torn. Guided by something deeper than thought, Sleepy Paws stepped forward until his paw brushed the nearest golden root. The moment he touched it, light rushed through him, filling his whiskers, his claws, even the tips of his fur. The ragged edges of the torn fibers trembled, drawn toward his touch. The thief's cloak of darkness flared, but Luma's lantern blazed in answer, casting a ring of warmth that held the shadow back. The prowler leapt, not to strike, but to push the figure away from the heart, its form breaking and reforming in flashes of golden and black. Sleepy Paws focused on the fibers, pulling them together, feeling them fuse with a warmth like the first light's hum. When the final strand knit into place, the entire chamber seemed to exhale. The roots brightened, their glow spilling into every crack and shadow. When Sleepy Paws opened his eyes, the thief was gone, the air lighter, though the memory of its hollow gaze lingered. The prowler stood beside him, its form calmer now, the golden glimmer steady and bright. It bowed its head once, not in submission, but in respect, before stepping back into the shadows, where it faded like mist at dawn. Luma lowered their lantern, smiling faintly. "The heart is safe. For now." And as the golden light swelled around them, Sleepy Paws knew the thread would call to him again someday, in another quiet evening beyond the edge of Willowbrook. The lantern's secret Sleepy Paws crouched low, whiskers trembling in the soft wind. The crystal lantern's glow seemed to shift between gold and silver, its light sliding over the meadow grass like liquid moonlight. He could hear his own heartbeat in the quiet, steady, yet quickening. The hum was no longer just sound. It felt like it was curling around his thoughts, coaxing him forward. His paw hovered above the lantern, and for a moment he hesitated, unsure if touching it would bring warmth or danger. But the pull in his chest was undeniable. With a gentle tap of one velvety paw, the lantern flared, spilling a warm wave of light that wrapped around him like a blanket. In an instant, the meadow was gone. The cool night air vanished, replaced by the scent of cedarwood and something faintly sweet, like summer honey. Sleepy Paws found himself standing on a winding stone path lined with tiny, glowing mushrooms. Overhead, the stars were brighter than he had ever seen them, like they had leaned closer just to watch him. The hum had changed into a faint, chiming melody, as if someone were playing crystal bells in the distance. Somewhere nearby, water trickled softly, its sound blending perfectly with the music. The world here felt both strange and familiar, like a dream he'd had long ago but had somehow forgotten. That he padded forward slowly, his paw steps echoing softly against the stones. On either side of the path, the grass shimmered faintly under the starlight, each blade tipped with dewdrops that reflected the light like tiny mirrors. He passed a cluster of foxgloves whose blossoms gave off a faint, magical glow, and a moth as white as frost fluttered past his nose. The further he walked, the more he felt that someone, or something, was expecting him. And yet, there was no fear in him, only a calm curiosity that made his tail sway gently behind him. The path curved, revealing a small wooden bridge arching over a clear stream. As Sleepy Paws stepped onto it, he paused to peer over the edge. The water below was so pure that he could see smooth pebbles at the bottom, glowing faintly in blues and greens. In the water's surface, his reflection wavered, but there was something unusual about it. Instead of the sleepy golden eyes he knew so well, his reflection's eyes shimmered with a light that seemed to match the lantern's glow. He leaned closer, and the reflection blinked, even though he hadn't. Before he could pull away, a voice drifted softly across the stream. It was gentle, melodic, and wrapped in the same strange warmth he had felt from the lantern. "Welcome, Sleepy Paws," it said, each word floating like a leaf on the water. "We've been waiting for you." He turned his head toward the source, and at the far end of the bridge, a figure emerged from the shadows, small, cloaked, and carrying another lantern, brighter than the one he had found. The figure beckoned silently, and though Sleepy Paws didn't yet know where this path led, he knew he had already begun the journey. The hollow forest's heart, the crack in the cavern wall, was narrower than Sleepy Paws expected, its jagged edges glittering faintly in the pale blue glow. The golden thread slipped through like liquid light, and Luma went first, their lantern casting a halo in the tight space. Sleepy Paws followed, the cold stone brushing his fur, until the walls gave way to a vast, echoing chamber. This was no natural cave. The ceiling stretched high above, threaded with roots as thick as tree trunks, each one pulsing faintly with golden veins. The thread they had followed all this way climbed one of these roots, spiraling upward into the dark. The air here was different, heavy, watchful, like 100 unseen eyes blinked in unison. Luma's lantern wavered. "We're close to the heart," they said, but their voice was quieter than usual, as though the chamber itself might be listening. From the shadows beyond the root, a new sound began, a faint, steady pulling, like the whisper of fabric being unraveled. The golden glow in the roots dimmed in rhythm with the sound. And then they saw it. The true enemy was not the prowler at all, but a figure draped in long, tattered threads of darkness, its hands moving with delicate precision as it teased apart the golden strands of the heart's roots. Its face was hidden, but the air around it carried the dry, brittle scent of something ancient and empty. The prowler emerged from the tunnel behind them, its form flickering. For the first time, it didn't advance. It stayed at the threshold, eyes locked not on Sleepy Paws, but on the thread-stealing figure. The faint golden glimmer inside its shadows burned brighter now, and Sleepy Paws felt a sudden certainty. The prowler had been chasing him not to destroy him, but to keep the thread out of this figure's reach. The thread thief's hands paused, and it turned toward them. No eyes were visible, only two hollow spaces where light seemed to die. It straightened slowly, the darkness around it swelling like a cloak. "Another lantern bearer," it said, though its voice was less spoken than breathed into their minds. "And one, chosen by the first light." The air tightened, the golden roots trembling as if in fear. Sleepy Paws braced himself. Whatever came next would decide not only the fate of the thread, but the truth of the prowler's place in it all. An arch of woven branches loomed ahead, its glow soft yet unshakably alive, like the quiet pulse of a heartbeat. The air beneath it shimmered faintly, and the scent of the meadow was replaced by something sharper, pine sap and cool stone. Sleepy Paws hesitated at the threshold, one paw lifted, the faint hum of the first light still lingering in his ears. Luma's lantern flickered, and they gave a single nod. "Once you pass through," they murmured, "the between paths will no longer shield you. Every step will be under the prowler's gaze." With a small, steady breath, Sleepy Paws padded forward. The moment his paw touched the light beneath the arch, the world shifted. The soft rustle of reeds and the clearing's glow dissolved into a dense stillness. Trees rose all around, their trunks tall and close, their bark glistening with threads of gold. Moonlight filtered down in thin streams, making the ground shimmer like frost. The golden thread from the well's vision was here, curling along the forest floor like a living ribbon, its glow bright against the deep shadows. Sleepy Paws' heart quickened. The thread was real. Luma stepped through behind him, their lantern casting ripples of light along the trees. "You must not lose sight of it," they said quietly. "The thread knows where to lead, but it will not wait." As if in agreement, the ribbon pulsed faintly and began to slide forward, weaving between roots and low-hanging branches. Sleepy Paws padded after it, his paws silent on the moss, ears swiveling at the faint sounds that moved just beyond the trees, too far to see, but close enough to feel. The forest grew darker as they went. The gold in the trunks dimmed, replaced by streaks of deep shadow that seemed to swallow light. Sleepy Paws noticed that Luma's lantern no longer reached as far as before. The edges of its glow felt frayed, like something was pressing in from the dark. A faint rustle to their left made Sleepy Paws pause. There, between two tree trunks, he caught the flicker of movement. Two pale blue glints shone in the distance, unblinking. The fur along his spine rose. The thread trembled. Luma's ears twitched, their silver eyes narrowing. "It's here," they whispered. From the shadows, a low, rolling sound began, not quite a growl, but deeper, like the earth itself was rumbling. The blue glints shifted, drawing closer, their light rippling like moonlight on black water. Sleepy Paws took a step back, but the thread surged forward, tugging at his paws as if urging him to keep moving. And then, from between the trees, the hollow prowler emerged, a shape darker than night, its form sliding and reshaping, feline yet formless, each paw step dimming the forest's glow. The path of frost, the frost creeping along the roots, bit at Sleepy Paws' paws, sharp and urgent. The pale eyes behind him grew larger, their glow stretching over the tunnel walls. The golden thread pulsed again, once toward the starlit path, once toward the dark slope, but the lower path's glow seemed oddly steady, almost like a heartbeat. In that instant, Sleepy Paws trusted the steadiness more than the light above. With a deep breath, he plunged down into the darker tunnel. The slope was steep, and the air grew colder with every paw step. Roots brushed his fur, and the soil beneath his paws turned from soft moss to gritty frost. The golden thread ran ahead, faint but unwavering, weaving between frozen rocks that sparkled faintly in the dim light. Behind him, the prowler followed, but slower now, its movements hesitant. The darkness still pressed close, but it no longer surged with the same hunger. Luma caught up, their lantern casting soft light along the icy walls. "You chose well," they said between breaths, their voice echoing strangely in the tunnel. "The frost path weakens it. The prowler cannot fully form here." Sleepy Paws glanced back. The shadow was still there, but its edges frayed like smoke caught in a breeze. The cold seemed to dull its power, though its eyes burned just as fiercely. The tunnel opened suddenly into a cavern bathed in pale blue light. Tall icicles hung from the ceiling like frozen bells, and the sound of dripping water echoed softly through the space. At the center of the cavern, the thread wound itself around a frozen pillar before vanishing into a narrow crack in the far wall. Beneath the pillar, an old stone basin caught the drips from above, each drop glowing faintly as it landed. Sleepy Paws felt a strange pull toward the basin, not like the first light's call, but something deeper, older. Luma's voice softened. "This is the basin of still waters. To follow the thread further, you must drink. But be warned, the water will show you what you fear most." Their silver eyes met his, calm yet unyielding. Behind them, the prowler lingered at the cavern's edge, unable to enter fully, its form shivering in the cold. The choice was clear: face the water's vision, or remain here in the frost while the thread slipped further away. What the water knows. The water in the basin glowed faintly, its surface trembling with each drip from the icicles above. Sleepy Paws leaned closer, the cold mist brushing his whiskers. For a long moment, he hesitated, the thought of seeing his greatest fear gnawed at him like an invisible thorn. But the thread wound on ahead, its golden glow slipping further into the crack in the wall, and something deep inside him knew it wouldn't wait. He lowered his head and lapped once. The taste was unlike any water he'd ever known, not icy, despite its source, but warm, almost sweet, and heavy with something that felt like memory. His vision blurred, the cavern melting away until he stood alone in an open field under a black sky. No stars, no moon, only the golden thread running at his paws. But as he followed it forward, he saw it was fraying. Threads snapped one by one, their light dimming, until only a thin filament remained. The prowler was there, but not as a distant hunter. It walked beside him, silent and steady. Its blue eyes were less cold here, almost searching, and when he looked closer, he saw that where the thread frayed, it was not the prowler's paws that severed it. Something else, something unseen, moved ahead, unraveling the path. The prowler's gaze turned toward him, and in its shifting form, he thought he glimpsed something startling. a faint golden glimmer deep inside the shadows. As though a small piece of the thread lived within it, the field dissolved. He was back in the cavern, paws braced against the stone. Luma's eyes were fixed on him, searching for answers. "What did you see?" they asked softly. Sleepy Paws hesitated, the warmth of the vision still heavy in his chest. He could tell them the truth, that the Prowler might not be the true enemy, but the memory of its cold pursuit made the words stick in his throat. Instead, he simply said, "The thread, it's weaker than we thought." Luma's expression tightened, but they nodded. "Then we have no more time to lose." They lifted their lantern, its light spilling across the frozen floor. Behind them, the Prowler still lingered, its frayed form unmoving. But Sleepy Paws thought he saw its head tilt ever so slightly, as if it, too, had seen something in the water, and now it was watching him for a different reason. The whispering evening, the little town of Willowbrook had a certain hush about it after the sun slipped behind the hills. The streets, cobblestoned and dappled with lamplight, seemed to breathe more slowly at this hour. From the open windows of small, crooked houses came the scents of warm bread, sweet cinnamon tea, and freshly laundered linen. On the far edge of the town, where the cottages thinned out and the hedgerows grew wild, sat a small, ivy-covered home. This was the home of Sleepy Paws, a gentle, slightly round tabby cat with fur the color of toasted caramel and eyes that looked like golden marbles. It was in this soft hour, with the breeze rustling through the grass, that Sleepy Paws liked to begin his nightly routine. He had a habit, almost a ceremony, of sitting on his favorite cushion in the bay window and watching the last colors drain from the sky. Every evening, as the first star appeared, Sleepy Paws would stretch his paws out until his claws just caught the edge of the cushion, then curl back into himself with a deep, rumbling purr. Tonight, however, there was something different. The air seemed thicker somehow, as if it carried a secret. He twitched his ears, listening. Somewhere beyond the hedges, past the blackberry brambles and tall meadow grass, a soft, humming sound was winding its way toward him. It was not a bird, nor the rustle of the wind. It was something deliberate. With his curiosity stirred, Sleepy Paws leapt down from the window seat and padded to the kitchen, where Mrs. Willow, the kindly old woman who cared for him, was brewing her evening tea. She noticed the alertness in his stance, the way his tail was slightly raised. "What is it, Sleepy?" she murmured, pouring hot water into a chipped porcelain teapot. The steam curled up like silver ribbons. He didn't answer, of course, but his eyes fixed on the door, as if something beyond it had called his name. Mrs. Willow smiled knowingly. She'd seen that look before. "If you must go, little one," she said softly, "be sure to come home before morning." The garden was still holding onto the last traces of daylight. Sleepy Paws stepped out, paws sinking into the cool grass, and listened again. The hum was clearer now, rising and falling like a lullaby sung through the leaves. He followed it past the rose bushes, past the weathered fence with peeling paint, and into the meadow beyond. The tall grass brushed against his fur, and the fireflies began their quiet dance around him. The scent of wild mint and damp soil filled the air, making his whiskers twitch with anticipation. The hum was almost a tune now, pulling him deeper towards something unseen. Finally, at the farthest edge of the meadow, he found the source, a small, round object glowing faintly in the grass. It looked like a tiny lantern made of crystal, its light pulsing in time with the hum. Sleepy Paws approached cautiously, his paws silent. As he leaned in to sniff it, the hum grew louder, warmer, and he felt a gentle pull. Not a physical tug, but something deeper, an invitation. He didn't know yet where it would lead him, only that it had been waiting for him all along. Behind him, the lights of Willowbrook shimmered faintly, and ahead lay the quiet unknown. The vision in the water, the glow from the Well of Dreams, seemed to thicken as Sleepy Paws leaned closer, until it felt as though the light itself had weight. The swirling slowed, each movement deliberate, like the water was waiting for his attention before it began. Then, without a sound, the liquid surface stilled completely, and the vision sharpened that he saw a forest unlike any he had wandered before, the trees rising impossibly tall, their bark streaked with silver veins. Between their roots, the ground shimmered faintly, as though stars had fallen there and sunk into the soil. A winding golden thread stretched across the forest floor, weaving between mossy trunks. Following it, Sleepy Paws saw something moving ahead, a shadowy figure, shifting like smoke, yet shaped like a great cat. Its eyes glowed pale blue, and with each step, the golden thread dimmed beneath its paws that a chill worked its way through Sleepy Paws' fur. The vision drew closer to the shadow beast, and he could see that its paws left no prints, only small pools of darkness that swallowed the starlight around them. The golden thread quivered as though it were alive, recoiling from the creature's touch. Then the shadow paused, lifting its head as if sensing it was being watched. Slowly, it turned toward him, and even through the well's glow, Sleepy Paws felt the weight of those cold eyes finding him. The vision trembled. A sudden wind stirred the clearing, and the surface of the well rippled again, replacing the forest with an image of a lantern, not the crystal one Sleepy Paws had found, nor Luma's bright guide light, but a taller, darker lantern whose flame burned with a silver-white fire. Around it, shapes gathered, creatures of all kinds, some winged, some antlered, all staring outward as though awaiting a signal. The flame inside the dark lantern flickered violently, bending towards Sleepy Paws like it knew him. When the vision faded, the well returned to its slow swirl of light. Luma stepped closer, their silver eyes unreadable. "The thread is in danger," they said quietly. "And if it fades completely, the between paths will close, forever. The shadow you saw is called the Hollow Prowler. It has no place here, and yet it hunts the thread to unravel it." They set their lantern down on the moss and knelt beside him. "Sleepy Paws, the first light shows you because you can follow the thread where others cannot. But once you begin, you will be seen, as you were just now." Sleepy Paws' whiskers quivered. He didn't understand everything, but he knew two things for certain. The thread mattered, and the Hollow Prowler must be stopped. Somewhere deep inside, the purr in his chest quieted into a steady determination. Luma straightened, lifting their lantern. "The forest awaits. If you are ready to follow, the first gate will open." The reeds behind them rustled, parting to reveal a narrow arch of woven branches glowing faintly in the starlight. The lantern keeper, the cloaked figure, stood very still at the far end of the bridge, the bright lantern held low so its light spilled across the mossy stones. Sleepy Paws paused mid-step, his tail curling slowly as he tried to make out the figure's face beneath the hood. All he could see was the glint of two eyes, not human, but not entirely animal either. They were silver gray, shimmering like the moon reflected in still water. The figure raised the lantern slightly, and with that motion, the chiming melody in the air swelled, as if responding to its glow. "You found the first light," the figure said softly, their voice carrying across the stream like mist. "Few have, and fewer still have followed it." The words carried no threat, only a strange formality, like the reciting of an old ritual. Sleepy Paws tilted his head, not understanding, but the warmth in his chest from the lantern still lingered, as though it understood for him. The figure stepped onto the bridge, their small boots making no sound, until they stood only a few steps away. Now Sleepy Paws could see beneath the hood. The face was gentle and angular, with fur the color of pale ash and a thin, fox-like muzzle. "I am Luma," they said, lowering the lantern until it was level with Sleepy Paws' whiskers. "Keeper of the lanterns, and guide to those who walk the between paths." Sleepy Paws blinked slowly, his ears twitching at the name. Luma's silver eyes studied him for a long moment before continuing. "The first light chooses only those who can hear it. You followed its hum, which means the door is open to you." They gestured toward the winding path beyond the bridge, where the air seemed to ripple faintly, like heat haze even though the night was cool. They turned without another word, clearly expecting him to follow. Sleepy Paws hesitated for only a heartbeat before padding after them. The path beyond the bridge felt different from the one before, narrower, with tall reeds whispering on either side. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called, but its hoot seemed stretched, echoing far longer than it should. Luma's lantern swung gently as they walked, casting shifting rings of light that sometimes revealed shapes in the shadows. A glimpse of antlers, a ripple in the grass, the faint flicker of many eyes watching from between the reeds. None of these shapes came closer, and yet the air carried the weight of being noticed. Finally, the reeds parted to reveal a small clearing. In its center stood a stone pedestal, overgrown with moss and ivy. Atop it sat a bowl filled with shimmering liquid light, its surface moving in slow, deliberate swirls. "This is the Well of Dreams," Loomis said, their voice lowering. "Before you go further, you must see." They gestured for Sleepy Paws to approach. He stepped forward cautiously, peering into the glowing surface. And as he did, the ripples parted to reveal images not of the clearing, but of somewhere far away, a vast forest under starlight, a dark shape moving between the trees, and a golden thread stretching toward it. Sleepy Paws felt his fur prickle. Whatever lay ahead, he knew now it would be more than a simple stroll through a magical meadow. The chase through shadows, the hollow prowler stepped fully into the thread's glow, and for a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Its body was a tangle of shifting smoke, each ripple hinting at muscle and fur before melting back into shadow. The pale blue light of its eyes was colder than moonlight on ice, fixed entirely on Sleepy Paws. Every instinct in his body screamed to run, but his paws remained rooted, his tail stiff with fear. Then the prowler moved, not with a run or a leap, but a flowing surge, as if the darkness itself had come alive. The golden thread recoiled sharply, pulling away from the creature's paws, and in that same instant, Luma's voice cut through the silence. "Go." The lantern's light flared, forcing the prowler to blink, and Sleepy Paws bolted forward, his paws barely touching the moss as he followed the glowing ribbon deeper into the trees. The forest became a blur. Branches whipped past his whiskers, and the air grew colder with every step. Behind him, the prowler gave chase, not with the sound of paw steps, but with a rushing hush, like a wave of midnight sweeping forward. The thread wound tightly around roots and stones, and more than once Sleepy Paws had to leap to keep from losing it. Luma's lantern bobbed behind him, its light struggling to hold back the tide of shadow creeping in from every side. Suddenly, the thread dipped into a narrow tunnel formed by fallen branches and woven roots. Without thinking, Sleepy Paws dove inside, the earthy scent of soil and damp wood filling his nose. The space was tight, and the golden glow was dim here, but the prowler's pale eyes still glimmered in the distance, pressing closer. The tunnel split ahead. One path sloped downward, the other up toward a faint glimmer of starlight. The thread seemed to flicker between the two, as if uncertain that Sleepy Paws skidded to a halt, his ears flat. The prowler's presence was nearly upon him now, the temperature dropping so sharply that frost began to form along the roots. Luma's voice came faintly from behind. "Choose." The thread pulsed once toward the darker path below, then once toward the light above, and in that heartbeat of indecision, the shadow's breath was almost on his tail.